I knew something was wrong before I even unlocked my apartment door. There were pink flip-flops outside my door that didn't belong to me. Then I heard my mother laughing inside. I froze in the hallway, still wearing my hospital scrubs after a brutal 12-hour shift, staring at apartment 4B like maybe I had somehow walked to the wrong floor. But I hadn't. That was my apartment, my name was on the lease, my furniture was inside, and somehow my mother was in there like she owned the place. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 32 years old, and at the time all of this happened, I was working as a respiratory therapist in Denver, Colorado. I spent my entire adult life trying to escape my family. That sounds harsh, but if you grew up in my house, you'd understand. My younger sister, Vanessa, was my mother's golden child. She was 2 years younger than me, beautiful, charming, and completely useless. And I don't mean that in a bitter older brother way. I mean she genuinely had never handled responsibility a single day in her life. She dropped out of college after one semester because it was too stressful. She quit jobs because managers were toxic. She moved in with boyfriends after dating them for 3 weeks and then cried to my mother whenever things fell apart. And my mother, she enabled every single disaster. Her favorite phrase growing up was, "Your sister just needs more support than you do." That sentence defined my childhood. Vanessa got birthday parties, I got forgotten birthdays. Vanessa got a used car at 16. I got told to find a job if I wanted transportation. Vanessa failed classes. It's because teachers are too hard on creative students. I got straight A's. That's what you're supposed to do. Nothing I did was ever enough. I remember being 13 and winning a statewide science competition. I came home carrying my trophy, excited for once. My mother barely looked at it. Vanessa had gotten dumped by her middle school boyfriend that same day. Guess whose pain mattered more? By 18, I was done. I got scholarships, worked part-time, took student loans, and moved across the country for college. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. No screaming matches, no favoritism, no being told to sacrifice for Vanessa. I built my own life from scratch. And it was hard. There were nights I slept in my car because I couldn't afford rent, weeks where I lived on instant noodles. I worked as a janitor while finishing school, then as a nursing assistant. Then finally became a respiratory therapist. It took years, but I was proud of myself. By 32, I had what felt like peace. A decent apartment downtown, reliable income, good friends. A quiet life and very limited contact with my family. I called my mother on holidays, sent birthday texts, that was it. Vanessa usually only contacted me when she wanted money, which I stopped giving years earlier. That made me selfish. Apparently, 3 months before everything exploded, Vanessa called me crying. That alone made my stomach hurt. "Ethan," she sobbed. "What happened?" "Tyler kicked me out." I sighed. Tyler was boyfriend number. Honestly, I lost count. "What happened this time?" "He cheated." "Are you sure?" "I found messages." I rubbed my forehead. And Mom said I could stay with her, but her apartment is too small. I immediately understood where this was going. "No," she got quiet. "I didn't ask yet. You were about to. It would only be temporary." "No, Ethan, no." She started crying harder. "I have nowhere to go. You have Mom. She says she doesn't have room." "That sounds like her problem." Her voice changed instantly, from crying victim to cold anger. "You're unbelievable," and she hung up. 2 days later, my mother called. "Why are you abandoning your sister?" There it was. "I'm not responsible for a grown woman. She's family. So am I." Silence. Then she said something that made me laugh bitterly. "You've always been jealous of your sister." I nearly dropped my phone. "Jealous of what exactly?" "She's had a harder life than you." I actually laughed. "Because she creates her own problems. You're cruel, and you're delusional." Then I hung up. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A month later, my mother called, sounding unusually sweet. That should have been my first warning. "Hi, honey." Honey, she hadn't called me that in years. "What do you want?" "That's a terrible way to answer your mother." "What do you want?" She sighed dramatically. "I miss you." I was thinking Vanessa and I could come visit Denver." "No." "What?" "No, you can't tell me I can't visit my son. You can visit Denver." "You're not staying with me. We'd get a hotel." That sounded suspicious. "For how long?" "Just a weekend." I hesitated. Against my better judgment, I agreed to dinner. That was my mistake. They arrived smiling like sitcom characters, pretending nothing was wrong. Vanessa hugged me dramatically. My big brother. I nearly laughed at how fake it felt. Dinner was uncomfortable but manageable. Then my mother said, "You have such a nice apartment." There it was, thanks, so spacious. It's one bedroom, still bigger than mine. I stared at her. She smiled while sipping wine. Vanessa avoided eye contact, and suddenly I understood. They weren't visiting, they were scouting. I ended dinner early. The next morning, they texted asking to see me again. I ignored them. They eventually went back home, or so I thought. Fast forward 3 weeks. I worked a brutal overnight shift during a flu outbreak. I was exhausted. All I wanted was sleep. Instead, I walked into my apartment and found my mother sitting on my couch watching television. My television, Vanessa was in my kitchen eating takeout, and there were suitcases everywhere. I just stood there. My brain couldn't process it. My mother smiled. "Oh, good, you're home." I stared at her. "What is this?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Relax, relax, relax. What are you doing in my apartment?" My mother muted the television. "We moved in." I laughed because surely that was a joke. Then I realized neither of them was laughing. What? We needed a fresh start. I looked at the suitcases, the boxes. Their clothes hanging in my hallway closet, and I felt something inside me snap. "How did you get in here?" Vanessa answered casually. "The spare key." I went cold. I had given my mother a spare key years earlier for emergencies. I forgot she still had it. "Get out." My mother stood up. "Don't speak to me like that. Get out." Vanessa stood too. "Why are you being dramatic?" "Dramatic? You broke into my home. We're family." "No, you're trespassers." My mother's face hardened. "You have plenty of room. It's a one-bedroom apartment. You can sleep in the living room temporarily." I stared at her in disbelief. "You moved into my apartment and expect me to sleep on the couch." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You're single. You don't need all this space." I genuinely couldn't believe this was happening. I walked into my bedroom and stopped cold. Vanessa's clothes were hanging in my closet. My dresser drawers had been emptied. My belongings were stacked in garbage bags. And my bed had pink sheets on it. Pink sheets. I walked back out slowly, dangerously calm. "You touched my things." Vanessa shrugged. "We needed space." My vision blurred with rage. "Get out." My mother stepped between us. "We already signed a lease termination on our old apartment." I blinked. "What? We live here now?" "No, no way. That's not how this works. It does if you stop being selfish." I grabbed my phone. My mother's eyes widened. "What are you doing? Calling the police?" Vanessa laughed. "You wouldn't." I dialed anyway. That's when my mother slapped the phone out of my hand, and the entire room went silent. Even she looked shocked she had done it. I slowly looked at her. Then at my shattered phone, then back at her. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother clearly, not as someone whose approval I desperately wanted. Not as someone who might someday love me properly, just a selfish woman who had used me my entire life. And I realized something terrifying. They had no intention of ever leaving. And I had no idea how far they were willing to go to stay. I stared at my shattered phone on the floor while my mother's heavy breathing filled the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Vanessa looked nervous for the first time all day. My mother slowly lowered her hand like she couldn't believe what she had done, but I could, because deep down this was who she had always been. She just usually hid it behind guilt trips, fake tears, and the word family. This time she ran out of manipulation tools and showed me exactly what she was capable of. "Ethan," she whispered. I looked at her without emotion. "Move." "What?" "Move before I do something all three of us regret." Vanessa immediately stepped backward. She knew that tone. My mother didn't. She tried one final guilt trip. "I am your mother, and this is my apartment. You can't throw us out. Watch me." I walked past them, grabbed my laptop from my desk drawer, and left the apartment. Vanessa screamed after me, "You're being insane." I turned around one last time. "No, I'm finally done being your victim." Then I slammed the door behind me. I sat in my car shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I had nowhere to sleep because those lunatics had literally occupied my apartment. I called my best friend Marcus. He answered immediately. "Yo, what's up?" I broke down, not crying, not screaming, just speaking in that numb voice people use when they're in shock. My mother and sister broke into my apartment and moved in. Silence. Then what? 20 minutes later, I was sitting in Marcus's kitchen explaining everything while his wife, Dana, handed me coffee. Marcus looked like he wanted to personally fight my entire family. "Call the police." I tried. My phone got smashed. Dana immediately handed me hers. "Use mine." And I did. The officers arrived at my apartment that night. I rode there with them. And somehow my mother had already started lying. The second officers walked in, she burst into fake tears. "My son is having a mental breakdown." I almost laughed from disbelief. Vanessa joined in. "He's been unstable for months." One officer looked at me carefully. "Sir, is this your legal residence?" "Yes." "Do you have proof?" Thankfully, I did. Lease documents, utility bills, rent statements, everything was saved in my email. I pulled them up on Marcus's laptop. The officers reviewed everything, then looked at my mother. Her fake tears stopped immediately. One officer spoke firmly, "You need to leave." My mother looked offended. "We're family. That doesn't matter. She invited us." I laughed. "That's a lie." Vanessa suddenly started screaming. "She said we could stay." The officer looked confused. Vanessa froze because she accidentally exposed their lie. They hadn't even coordinated properly. The police gave them 10 minutes to collect essentials and leave for the night, and that's when things got worse. Vanessa ran into my bedroom and locked herself inside, then started destroying things. I heard glass shattering, furniture slamming. My mother screamed at officers that they were traumatizing her daughter. Police forced open my bedroom door, and I'll never forget what I saw. My television smashed, my laptop screen cracked, my clothes cut apart, and Vanessa standing in the middle of the room crying like she was the victim. She was arrested on the spot. My mother lost her mind. "You can't arrest her," the officer calmly responded. "She destroyed private property. She's emotional. That's still illegal." Then my mother tried physically stopping them. Huge mistake. She got arrested too. I stood there frozen while both of them were handcuffed and taken out of my apartment. My neighbors watched from their doorways like it was reality TV. One old woman slowly clapped. I wish I was joking. After they left, I completely collapsed. Marcus had to help me sit down. I looked around my destroyed apartment and finally cried. Not because of the money, not because of the damage, because it was the final confirmation that my family truly never loved me. They loved access. They loved control. They loved what I could provide. And the second I resisted, they tried to ruin me. Over the next week, things got uglier. Extended family started calling me nonstop. Apparently, my mother had posted online that I made my elderly mother homeless, that my mentally struggling sister was abused by police, that I was heartless. Half my relatives attacked me without hearing my side. Until security footage changed everything. My apartment building had hallway cameras. The property manager pulled footage showing my mother and sister moving dozens of boxes into my apartment while I was at work. They clearly used their own key. They clearly entered without permission. Then another clip showed me arriving home confused, then the police arriving later, then them being removed. My cousin Lee saw the footage first, and she called me immediately. "Why didn't you tell everyone the truth?" I laughed bitterly. "Would they have believed me?" She got quiet. "No." Then she did something I'll always appreciate. She posted the footage publicly. Everything changed overnight. Relatives who attacked me suddenly went silent. Some apologized, others disappeared. My aunt called crying. "I didn't know, you didn't ask." That silence was satisfying, but the biggest twist came 2 weeks later. I found out my mother and sister had done this before. Not exactly like this, but similar. Their former landlord contacted me after hearing about the situation online. Apparently they stopped paying rent for 6 months, then manipulated church members into paying their bills. Then got evicted. That's why they targeted me. I was their backup plan, their retirement plan, their emergency housing solution, and they assumed I'd fold like always. But they underestimated how exhausted I was. Criminal charges moved forward. I almost dropped everything. I didn't want the stress. Then Marcus said something that changed my mind. "If you let this go, they'll do it again to someone else." He was right. Vanessa accepted a plea deal for property destruction. She had to pay restitution. My mother got charges related to unlawful entry and interfering with law enforcement. Watching her stand in court was surreal. She looked smaller somehow, older, angrier. She stared at me like I betrayed her. The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up with shaking hands and said, "My whole life I was taught that loving my family meant sacrificing everything for them." I looked directly at my mother. "But real family doesn't steal your home." I looked at Vanessa. "Real family doesn't destroy your life because they hear the word no." Then I said the hardest truth. "I spent 32 years begging both of you to love me the way I loved you." My voice cracked. "I'm done begging." The courtroom went silent. Even Vanessa cried, but for once their tears didn't control me. The judge ordered restitution payments and mandatory counseling. After that day, I cut contact completely. New phone number, new apartment, new locks, and eventually a new life. 8 months later, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Claire. She was a pediatric nurse with an aggressively sarcastic sense of humor and zero tolerance for nonsense. On our third date, I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, "Your family sounds insane." I laughed harder than I had in months. "Yeah, but you survived them." That sentence stayed with me, because for years I saw myself as abandoned, forgotten. Less loved, but survival takes strength, and I had built an entire life despite everything they did. A year later, Marcus helped me move into a house I bought, my own house. And when I held those keys, I cried, not because of the house, but because nobody could ever take it from me. Not again. Last I heard, my mother lives with a distant relative in Arizona. Vanessa bounces between unstable relationships, and sometimes relatives ask if I'll forgive them. My answer is always the same. I forgave them for my own peace, but forgiveness does not mean access. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is lock the door people spent your whole life teaching you to leave open.